So have you ever like tried to describe your favorite little hidden cafe
Oh,
to
yeah.
a friend? Like I always feel like I want to paint a picture with words,
Yeah,
so they can really see it. It's
totally.
not just a cafe, but something more.
Yeah, and then there's the whole challenge of like actually getting them there. It's amazing how hard it can be to give directions
Oh my gosh, I know.
that don't send someone in like circles.
I'm always like, turn left at the dot thing.
Yeah,
It used to be a dot bakery or something.
exactly.
So anyway, you've got a stack of sources here about describing places and giving directions.
Right.
What's the mission for our deep dive today?
Well, it's interesting you've given me some material that goes way beyond just knowing the right words.
Okay.
Like, we're going to uncover the art
Ooh, art. I like that.
of crafting descriptions that totally transport your listener
Okay.
and giving directions that are so good they'd make a GPS proud.
All right, I'm intrigued. Where do we even begin with this art of description?
Well, we've got to start by like setting the scene.
Okay.
Think about the difference between describing a super busy city
Okay.
versus a quiet little village.
Right.
Your sources say it's super important to use words that evoke like the right feeling right away.
Yeah, like you wouldn't call Times Square
No way.
quaint, would you?
No.
You'd probably use a word like energetic or
Right.
sprawling or
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for that village,
Yeah. Yeah.
you might choose charming or
Yeah.
peaceful,
Right.
but it goes beyond just individual words.
Okay.
Our sources highlight the role of landmarks,
Mm-hmm.
both natural and man-made.
Yeah, that makes sense. Landmarks are like instant visuals in your mind,
Totally.
right? If you say Eiffel Tower.
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows exactly what
Yeah,
you're talking about.
Exactly. Think about how those landmarks shape a place's identity.
Yeah.
You got your natural wonders, towering mountains, dramatic coastlines,
Right.
lush forests that evoke this sense of awe and grandeur.
And then you've got your man-made monuments, historic buildings, bustling squares, each one telling a story about the people and the history of that location.
It's like each landmark adds another layer to the picture that you're painting.
Yes.
But our sources also talk about going beyond just what you see, right?
Oh, yeah,
It's about how a place makes you feel.
absolutely. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's about tapping into those sensory details. Not just what you see,
Okay.
but what you hear,
Right.
smell, maybe even taste.
So instead of just saying, it was a busy street, you might say something like,
Exactly.
the street hummed with the sounds of chatter and laughter,
Yeah.
and the air was filled with the aroma of street food.
Oh, that's a great example.
Yeah.
You've suddenly transported your listener right into that scene.
Okay.
They're not just imagining a street, they're
Yeah.
practically experiencing it.
I'm starting to get this. But let's be honest, I am the queen of getting lost.
Okay.
What about the practical side of things? How do we actually give directions that get someone where they need to go?
Yeah, so that's where those clear
Right.
step-by-step instructions come in.
Right.
Think of it like building a roadmap with words.
Okay.
Our sources say it's important to start with a familiar landmark as a reference point.
That makes sense. So instead of just saying turn left,
Right.
you'd say turn left at the big clock tower.
Exactly. You've given your listener a visual anchor.
Right. But sometimes landmarks aren't enough.
Right.
What if there are 2 clock towers?
Yeah.
Or what if they don't know what the clock tower looks like?
That's where those clarifying details become crucial.
Okay.
Those little extras that paint a clearer picture.
Right.
You could say something like,
Mhm.
turn left at the clock tower with the bright blue face.
Right.
Or it's the taller of the 2 clock towers, the one with the scaffolding around it.
You know, one thing I've noticed when traveling is people sometimes give directions using landmarks I've never even heard of.
Oh, yeah.
Like, go past the old lady selling mangoes. I'm like, which old lady?
Right.
There are like dozens.
That's a fantastic point, and it brings up how important cultural awareness is
Okay.
when it comes to giving directions.
Yeah.
What might be a super clear landmark to someone who's lived in a place their whole lives could be totally foreign to a visitor.
It makes you realize how much our understanding of a place is like shaped by our own experiences.
Exactly.
And cultural background.
Yeah, in some cultures, directions might be based more on like compass directions or distances
Right.
rather than landmarks.
So how do we navigate those cultural differences? It seems like there's like a real art
Yeah.
to both understanding and giving directions well
It.
in different situations.
One key takeaway from your sources is the importance of politeness.
Right.
When you go up to someone for directions,
Yeah.
a simple, excuse me, could you please help me,
Yeah.
can go a long way.
It shows respect
Absolutely.
and acknowledges that you're asking for their time and help.
Mm.
And you know, A little humility never hurts when you're lost.
Never hurts. And remember, even if someone's directions don't make sense at first,
Right.
just try to be patient and ask clarifying questions.
Mm-hmm.
You might even learn something new about the place
Okay.
and its culture in the process.
I'm feeling much more equipped to handle those tricky situations now.
Good.
But we've been talking so much about vocabulary and landmarks.
Right.
Is there anything else that can help us paint a more vivid picture
There is.
with our descriptions?
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Your sources talk about the power of idioms
Oh,
in describing places and giving directions.
idioms. Now, those are something I haven't even thought about.
They're those colorful expressions
Right.
that don't always make literal sense.
Yeah.
But they add a certain flair
Okay.
and personality to our language.
Like off the beaten path.
Exactly.
I love that.
It paints a picture of a place that's unique and undiscovered.
Right.
Maybe a little adventurous.
What about follow your nose?
Oh, yeah.
It's a fun way of saying go straight ahead, but it also evokes a sense of like using your senses to explore.
You're catching on quickly.
Yeah.
Idioms can add a layer of cultural richness
Okay.
to our descriptions.
Yeah.
For example, the idiom follow your nose might seem straightforward,
Right.
but it actually reflects a time when people relied more on their senses, particularly smell, to navigate.
Hmm.
Think about how the smell of freshly baked bread
Right.
could lead people to a bakery
Mm-hmm.
in the days before street signs and GPS.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. It's like each idiom has a hidden story behind it.
Yes,
A little glimpse into the past.
totally.
And how people used to interact with their surroundings.
You're absolutely right.
Hmm.
And by understanding these hidden stories,
Okay.
we can use idioms more effectively to add depth and cultural nuance
Okay.
to our descriptions and directions.
This is blowing my mind. Who knew there was so much to unpack when it comes to describing places and giving directions?
I know, it's fascinating.
It's more than just pointing and saying, go that way.
Right.
It's about painting a picture, telling a story,
Yeah.
and connecting with a place on like a deeper level.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground already,
Yeah.
but there's still so much more to explore.
Okay.
Why don't we take a look at some real-world examples
Okay.
of how these concepts can be applied?
Sounds like a plan. Let's see how these tips and tricks can help us navigate the world around us.
Yes.
From bustling city streets to those hidden gems tucked away off the beaten path.
I love it. Let's go.
All right.
All right, so let's imagine someone asks you for directions
Okay.
to that hidden cafe you love.
Right.
How would you guide them using all this stuff we've been talking about?
Okay, so let's say this cafe is
Yeah.
tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, kind of off the beaten path, like we were saying.
Yeah.
I'd probably start by giving them a general sense of the area.
Right.
Like, it's in the historic district a few blocks north of the main square with the big fountain.
Good start.
Yeah.
You grounded them with a familiar landmark
Right.
and gave them a sense of direction.
Okay.
Now, how do you lead them to the cafe itself?
Well, there's no direct path from the square.
Okay.
So I'd tell them to head north on Oak Street, you know, the one with all the beautiful old trees forming a canopy overhead,
Right.
and then take a left at the corner where that little antique shop is.
Okay.
It's the one with the vintage bicycles displayed out front.
I like how you're using those visual cues
Right.
to make the directions memorable.
Yeah.
But remember what we said about cultural differences.
Oh, yeah.
Not everyone might recognize an antique shop
You're right.
or know what a vintage bicycle looks like.
I need to be more specific.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd say, look for the shop with a sign that says antiques
Okay.
and lots of old-fashioned bicycles parked outside.
Much better. You've given more concrete details that anyone can understand,
You're right.
no matter their background.
Yeah.
How about we switch gears and try describing a place that's a bit more challenging?
Okay.
Maybe somewhere you've traveled.
Ooh, challenge accepted. Okay, picture this.
Okay.
A bustling night market in Marrakech.
Ooh.
The air is thick with the sense of spices and grilled meats.
Okay.
And the sound of vendors hawking their wares just fills the narrow alleyways.
Wow. Now you're talking.
Right.
I can practically feel the energy of the place.
Yeah.
But how would you describe it to someone who's never experienced anything like it?
Well, I definitely focus on those sensory details.
Okay.
I'd say something like, imagine a labyrinth of stalls overflowing with colorful textiles,
Yes.
handcrafted jewelry, and mountains of fragrant spices.
I love it.
The air is alive with the sizzle of kebabs
Mm-hmm.
and the rhythmic beat of traditional music.
That's a great start. But remember, we want to really transport our listener.
Right.
How can we add some cultural context?
Good point. I could add, The market is a vibrant tapestry of
Yeah.
Moroccan culture, where the ancient art of bargaining is still practiced with a smile and a twinkle in the eye.
That's much better. You've not only described the scene,
Right.
but also given them a glimpse into the cultural meaning
Yeah.
of the market.
You know, thinking about that Marrakech market,
Yeah.
it reminds me of another important thing about describing places.
Okay, what's that?
It's about capturing the energy of the people.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about the physical space.
Yeah, right.
It's about the human element
Exactly.
that brings it to life.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Think about those lively conversations.
Yeah.
The laughter of children playing.
Right.
The friendly banter between vendors and customers.
Exactly.
These details add another layer
Yeah.
of depth and authenticity to your descriptions.
It's like we're creating a soundtrack
Totally.
to go with the visual image.
Yeah.
Suddenly the place feels alive and buzzing with activity.
And that brings us back to the power of language.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about conveying information.
Right.
It's about crafting an experience for the listener. We're using words to create a world they can step into
Right.
and explore with their senses.
It's like we're wielding a magic wand,
Yes.
conjuring up images and emotions with each word and phrase.
I love it. But speaking of phrases,
Yeah.
remember those idioms we were discussing earlier?
Yes.
I'm curious how they can enhance
Yeah.
our descriptions and directions.
Okay.
Let's play another round of our idiom game.
Okay.
This time, I'll describe a place or situation,
Okay.
and you try to come up with an idiom
Okay.
that captures the essence of what I'm describing.
All right.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here's the first one.
Okay.
Imagine a small town nestled in a remote valley,
Okay.
far from the hustle and bustle of city life.
Mm-hmm.
The pace of life is slow and relaxed,
Okay.
and the locals are warm and welcoming.
That sounds like a place that's a world away from everything else.
Okay.
A place where you can totally escape
Yeah,
and unwind. Would off-the-grid work here?
that's a good one.
Yeah.
It definitely conveys that sense of remoteness and detachment from the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
It could also suggest a certain self-sufficiency
Yeah.
and connection to nature.
Right.
But I was actually thinking of a slightly different idiom, Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It really captures that tranquil and
Yeah.
timeless atmosphere. Like
Exactly.
time moves slower there.
Yeah,
And everyone is just content with the simple pleasures of life.
you got it. Now let's try another one.
Okay.
Imagine you're in a city that's so crowded
Okay.
and chaotic. It's hard to find your bearings.
Mm.
There's so much going on.
Yeah.
You feel overwhelmed and a bit lost.
Okay. That sounds like my nightmare.
Uh-oh.
For this one, I'm going to go with Lost in the Shuffle.
Okay.
It really captures that feeling of being swallowed up by the crowd
Yes.
and struggling to find your way.
Excellent choice.
Yeah.
It perfectly conveys that sense of disorientation
Right.
and anonymity
Mm-hmm.
that can come with being in a big, bustling city.
Yeah.
You're really starting to master the art
Aw, thanks.
of using idioms to
Yeah.
paint a picture with words.
You know, it's not just about knowing the meanings of these phrases.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how to use them
Yeah.
effectively in different situations.
You've hit on a crucial point.
Okay.
It's like having a toolbox full of colorful tools.
Right.
You need to know which tool to use for which job
Mm-hmm.
and how to wield it with precision.
So how do we get better at using idioms
Good question.
in our descriptions and directions?
Right.
Is it just about memorizing as many as possible?
While a wide vocabulary is definitely helpful,
Okay.
it's more about developing an ear for language
Right.
and
Yeah.
paying attention to how idioms are used
Okay.
in everyday conversations.
That makes sense. It's like learning a new language.
It is?
You have to immerse yourself
Right.
and pay attention to the nuances.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
Try incorporating idioms into your descriptions and directions,
Okay.
even if it feels a bit awkward at first. The more you use them, the more natural they'll become.
You know, this entire deep dive has been a great reminder
I agree.
that language is such a powerful tool.
It is.
It's how we share our experiences,
Yeah,
connect with others, and make sense of the world around us.
it's true.
And by mastering this art of describing places and giving directions,
Right.
we can enhance those connections and make our interactions more meaningful and memorable.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Right. You know, it's funny. We've been talking about describing places and giving directions.
Right.
But this whole conversation has felt like its own little journey.
I know, right? We've gone from like bustling city streets to quiet villages.
Yeah.
explored sensory details and cultural context, even uncovered those hidden stories behind idioms.
And you know what's fascinating? I feel like I'm noticing these things more in everyday life now.
Oh, yeah.
Like the other day, I was reading a travel blog, and the writer used that phrase, a city that never sleeps, to describe New York.
Oh, yeah.
And suddenly I have this whole new appreciation
Right.
for how a simple phrase can like evoke such a strong feeling.
It's true. It's like we've unlocked this new level of awareness
Yeah.
when it comes to language and how it shapes our understanding of the world.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today,
Yes.
what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that describing places and giving directions, it's about more than just getting from point A to point B.
Right.
It's about sharing experiences,
Yeah.
connecting with others,
Yeah.
and enriching our understanding of the world around us.
Beautifully said. It's like we're all explorers in a way,
Yes.
navigating this vast and complex world.
Right.
And by using language thoughtfully and creatively, we can make those explorations more meaningful
Absolutely.
and memorable for both ourselves and those we share them with.
Well said.
So next time you find yourself describing your favorite cafe or guiding a friend through a new city,
Yeah.
remember to tap into those sensory details. Embrace those idioms.
Yes.
Be mindful of cultural context.
Exactly.
And who knows, you might just inspire someone to embark on an adventure of their own.
I love it. That's a great way to end it. All right. So have you ever tried to describe a place and the words just don't do it justice? Like when you see a breathtaking sunset or find a hidden gem of a cafe, it's like you want to capture that feeling, but then you try to explain it and it just falls flat.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're giving someone directions and you end up sending them in the completely wrong direction. Happens to the best of us.
Right.
Well, today we're going to deep dive into the art of describing places and giving directions so you can navigate conversations and the real world with way more confidence and ease. Because describing places goes beyond just, being practical. It's about bringing your stories to life, sharing your experiences and, connecting with people on a whole other level. Like you're painting a picture with words and you're taking them right there with you.
Yeah, totally. It's amazing how the words we use to describe places can actually shape how we see them. Have you ever noticed how just one word, like bustling or tranquil, can totally change how you feel about a city? It's like we're using words to create a mental map, not just for others, but also for ourselves.
That's so true. I've definitely felt that. When I can't find the right words, it's almost like a part of the experience is missing. So where do we even start with building up, our descriptive vocabulary?
Well, one way is to think about the different categories of places we come across, like urban areas. They usually need words that show energy and movement. Think about skyscrapers piercing the skyline or streets teeming with life, maybe even a symphony of car horns and laughter.
Okay, I like that. So it's not just about saying buildings and streets. It's about capturing the feeling of the city with words.
Exactly. And when we switch to nature, it's a whole different story. Instead of sharp lines and concrete, we've got rolling hills, dense forests, and maybe even a babbling brook flowing through a meadow. The words become softer, They evoke peace and tranquility.
Wow, it's amazing how just hearing those words makes me feel like I'm actually there. It's like language can change our mood.
Wow.
But what about those landmarks? The ones that define a place. How do we describe those in a way that captures their importance?
Landmarks are interesting because they often have layers of history and meaning. You could describe a towering cathedral as a testament to human ingenuity, or a crumbling castle as whispering tales of bygone eras, or even a busy market square as the beating heart of the community. You gotta go beyond just what you see and tap into the stories and emotions they evoke.
I'm seeing how powerful this can be. We're not just describing places. We're weaving stories that connect us to the past, the present, and even the people who live there. But okay, let's say we've got all these amazing words. How do we actually structure a description so it makes sense, is engaging, and doesn't sound like we're reading a dictionary?
That's a great question. It's definitely an art. Imagine you're painting a picture. You wouldn't just throw random colors on the canvas, right?
No way. I'd end up with a big mess.
Exactly. Just like a painter uses layers and composition, we can use structure to create a good description. One way is to start with a general overview to set the scene for the listener. You might say something like, the town is nestled amidst rolling hills, its terracotta rooftops glowing in the afternoon sun.
I see. So we start broad, giving them a sense of the atmosphere, But then what? Do we just list every detail we can think of?
Not exactly. After the overview, we focus on specific things that make the place unique. You could continue with. A labyrinth of cobblestone streets winds its way through the town center, leading to a bustling market square where vendors hawk everything from colorful textiles to fresh-baked bread.
Ooh, I can almost smell that bread. Adding those sensory details makes it so real.
And finally, just like an artist signs their painting, we add our personal touch by sharing our own feelings and experiences. It could be something simple like the air hummed with a vibrant energy that was contagious, or as I wandered through the narrow alleys, I felt like I had stepped back in time.
So we have the overview, the details, and the personal touch. It's like a recipe for a perfect description. I'm already feeling more confident. But what about giving directions? That's a whole other challenge, especially when someone's not familiar with the area.
Giving directions can be tricky, but it's a skill you can totally master. And you know what? It uses a lot of the same ideas we've talked about. It's all about clarity, being concise, and using language that creates a clear picture.
Okay, I'm interested. Let's explore the world of directions and find those hidden language gems. But first, gotta refill my tea. Be right back.
Directions. It might seem simple, but there are so many little things that can make a big difference. Let's start with the basics. Go straight, turn left, it's on your right. We use these all the time. But just like describing places, we can make them even better by adding more details.
I'm back and ready to dive in. You're right, those are the essential phrases, but sometimes they need a little something extra. What can we do to make them more, helpful?
Think about it this way. If I say, turn left at the corner, that might work if there's only one corner. But what if there are like a bunch of streets? Then you need a landmark. I could say, turn left at the corner where that old bookstore is. Now, there's no way to get confused.
They make sense. Landmarks help us understand directions in the real world. But what about people who have, zero sense of direction? I have friends who get lost in their own neighborhood. How do you even help those people?
That's when those little words like on, next to, between, and across from become super important. They might seem small, but they make things so much clearer. Instead of saying it's near the park, you can say it's right across from the park entrance, the one with the big red door. It's like you're drawing a map with words.
It's like building a GPS with language, adding those extra details for a smooth trip. But directions aren't just about where something is right. They're about guiding someone through steps. How do we make sure our instructions are easy to follow and don't confuse people?
You got it. That's where words like first, then, next, and finally come in. They're like the punctuation of directions. They create a flow that's easy to understand. Instead of a jumbled mess of turns, we're giving them a clear roadmap.
Okay, let's try this out. Imagine we're in a busy market square, and someone asks for directions to the closest coffee shop. How would you explain it, using everything we've talked about?
I'd say something like, okay, first walk straight until you get to the fountain with the bronze statue. Then turn left onto a narrow street with cobblestones. You'll pass a few shops, and the coffee shop will be on your right, just before a bright blue building.
Wow, that's so clear. I can picture the whole route. It's like you turn those ideas into a real journey. But can we make directions even more interesting? Something more than just the steps.
Of course. Just like with describing places, we can add sensory details. Instead of saying walk down the street, you could say stroll along the cobblestone path, where you can smell fresh bread from the bakery.
Now that's a direction I want to follow. It's not just about getting there. It's about enjoying the experience. But sometimes, even with the best directions, people still get lost. Are there any foolproof ways to make sure people don't get lost?
You're right. Sometimes things just go wrong. But one way to help people stay on track is to use landmarks as reference points instead of turn right after 2 blocks. Try turn right just after you pass the church with the tall spire. Landmarks help people recognize where they are.
It's like giving them breadcrumbs to guide them to the streets. Speaking of breadcrumbs, we often use fun expressions to add personality to our language. Do those work with directions too?
Totally. Think about phrases like a stone's throw away or just around the corner, or even take the scenic route. They make directions sound more friendly and casual.
I love that. It's like we're encouraging people to enjoy the adventure of finding their way. Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've talked about how to make basic directions better. With landmarks and those little prepositions, we've learned how to make them flow smoothly with words like first and then. And we've even added sensory details and fun expressions. But, I have to admit, I've always struggled with compass directions. North, south, east, west. They just never stick in my brain. Is there any hope for people like me who are directionally challenged?
You're not the only one. I think a lot of people struggle with compass directions. Even I have to think about it sometimes, which way the sun rises, just to make sure I'm going the right way.
Oh, good. I'm not alone then. It makes sense, though. We usually use landmarks and street names more often. But let's step back for a second. We've talked about all these techniques for describing places and giving directions. But what's the bigger picture here? Why is it so important to be good at this stuff?
That's a really great question. And I think it gets to the core of why we love language so much. It goes beyond just, sharing information. It's about making connections, sharing our experiences, and even changing the way we see the world around us. When you describe a place to someone, you're not just listing facts. You're inviting them to experience it through your eyes.
Yeah, that's true. I've had people describe places so well that I felt like I was actually there, even if I'd never been there before. It's like they opened up a whole new world with their words.
Exactly. And when you can give clear directions, you're not just helping someone get somewhere, you're giving them the confidence to explore and discover new places on their own.
So even these small conversations can really change how people experience the world. It makes you realize that language is much more powerful than we sometimes think. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main thing you want listeners to remember?
I'd say this: don't underestimate how powerful words are. They can shape your experiences and connect you with others. Whether you're describing an amazing view, giving directions to a hidden spot, or simply sharing a story about your favorite place, the words you choose can make a world of difference.
That's a great reminder. And the best way to use that power
Mm.
is to actually put it into practice. So to everyone listening,
hmm
I challenge you to go out and describe a place you love to someone who's never been there, or help someone who's lost by giving them directions. You might be surprised how good it feels to use your skills to help others and share your own unique view of the world.
And who knows? Maybe you'll inspire someone to explore somewhere new or see their own neighborhood in a different way. The world is full of amazing places waiting to be discovered, and with the right words, we can unlock their magic.
Totally agree. So keep exploring, keep describing, and keep those conversations going. Until next time, happy adventuring.